Welcome back to Growth Colony. For those of you who are first-time listeners, you'll be hearing from B2B founders, CMOs, and marketing leaders. We chat about the newest and most effective tools and strategies in the B2B space. I'm Alex Hipwell with Xgrowth, and your co-host for this podcast, where we go candid with our guests' successes and failures, so you don't make the same mistakes. At least hopefully you don't. Let's dive in.
Before I go on any further, Tim, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. Good to chat about it.
Absolute pleasure. Tim, for those people who might not know who you are or the company, Who Gives a Crap, can you give us a quick intro?
Yeah. So we're Who Gives a Crap. We make eco-friendly toilet paper and sell direct to consumers, and then we also donate 50% of our profits to building toilets and sanitation projects in developing countries. So currently 2.3 billion people in the world don't have access to a toilet, and where our mission is to ensure everyone has access to sanitation by 2050. So we have a big lofty goal, selling toilet paper.
That's awesome. Let's dive in and let's talk about, give us a little bit of a background about yourself, Tim.
Cool. Yeah, so I came from, I grew up in a national park. So I, from a really young age, loved the environment. And then as I went through my schooling and university, I got really into the idea that you could use business as a kind of a vehicle to help the environment and also help social issues. And then over my time, I kind of weaved my way and met Simon at a TED Talk that he did when he was first launching the brand. And then kind of basically stayed in touch and eventually moved into Who Gives a Crap to help do the marketing. And so now I spend the majority of my day talking about toilet paper and trying to communicate to people the benefits of what we do. So basically we for the most part, I do the marketing, and we're growing Who Gives a Crap as fast as possible to reach that goal, which I mentioned, which is make sure everyone has access to a toilet by 2050. So it's a big lofty goal and can sometimes feel really far ahead, but it's something which helps bring the team, including myself, together, and it's a good goal to work towards.
No, and it's amazing what you and the team have done. I mean, you reached 90 people in a fairly short period of time, and also it's very awesome to have that big, hairy, audacious goal in the background as well. Cool. What I'd like to do, first of all, talk about toilet paper is now, completely associated with Corona, right? And what we've seen, toilet papers being stacked up in people's trolleys and running out of Kohl's and Woolies. Can you give us a little bit of background, how, in terms of timeline, how did that look like from a toilet paper manufacturer's perspective, right? What did you see across the world? Because the other thing is you have multiple offices. You have operations in China, Australia, US, UK, so on and so forth. How did that look like from you and your team standing behind the wheels and looking at the world?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We have a couple of staff members in Hong Kong and in China. And so we had a very I wouldn't say first-hand experience, but we were very much aware of our staff who were in China whilst Corona was first beginning to pop up on everyone's radar.
When was this?
This would have been probably early January, I would say, or when Corona first was coming to light. The days have all blended to one now, so I'm kind of losing track of where time goes. But basically, it was early January, and so we were very much aware of the situation there and how people were even in China were stocking toilet paper. They had very similar behaviours occurring there, and so we're really worried about the staff and making sure they were happy and being well catered for because they were in isolation well before we were. And so that was the first part. The second part was seeing this wave of toilet paper really taking off as an essential item that people were beginning to stockpile. And we didn't really think it would get to international level as it has eventually. We were very much aware of that was happening. And then once we saw the issues around the cruise ships where people were beginning to take the coronavirus outside of China, or it was beginning to appear outside of China, we then realized that the potential for the stockpiling to happen in other countries was very much a real possibility. So We were keeping an eye on it, especially in Australia. We saw the spike happen sooner rather than other countries. So we saw it, would have been the 2nd or 3rd of March, I think it was. We basically saw an uptick in sales one afternoon. And then the next day, we saw 10x sales out of nowhere. And that's when the stockpiling really began. And then it was interesting because USA was still quite calm in their sales. So we have an online store in USA and then also UK. And it wasn't until about a week later that USA had the same spike with stockpiling. And then even then, UK was still pretty mellow. But then it wasn't until about 4 or 5 days later, UK had a similar situation. So basically from the beginning of March in Australia, we were able to basically, well, actually even in China, seeing the situation occur, but in terms of actual sales, we saw the situation kind of build from Australia and then kind of go from each country around the world. And they had very similar, the spikes in terms of stockpiling and new customers.
Interesting. Why do you think, of all things, toilet paper?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes back to economics 101 in a way, which is when there's an economic downturn, there's a lot more fear in the market and in the community. And so what happens is a big part of the result of that is people go into basically fear of missing out mode. Stockpiling all of the essential items. So you'll see things like hygiene, laundry detergent, and those sort of products will always go up in sales in a situation where there's a lot of fear. And so what happened is basically when people began to stop panic buy toilet paper, as a human behavior point of view, it comes back to basically the FOMO, like the fear of missing out mentality. So what happens is people don't actually rationally look at what they need to buy. They actually go, someone else is buying extra toilet paper. I don't want to be the last one who misses out, so I'm just going to buy it anyway. So it's not actually a logical thing of saying, oh, I'll get some in 2 weeks' time. It's more a thing of you see your neighbor getting extra toilet paper or you see the person next to you in the aisle getting extra toilet paper and you don't want to miss out, so you take more. And then to compound that issue is that because toilet paper is such a big, bulky product, it only takes like 2 or 3 packs off a shelf or 4 or 5 packs off a shelf to see a big kind of gap in that shelf space, which makes you feel like there's less and less there. So you then go even harder and go even more toilet paper to get it from the store. So it's a real compounding effect. So we definitely saw an increase in new customers purely based on the fact that they'd gone to the store, there wasn't anything physically in a store, and then they'd gone online and searched toilet paper and then found our online toilet paper website. So it's kind of one of those things where people were like just ran to the store to get as much as they could, and then were like scrambling to find places everywhere else. So it really comes back to that basically it's a base level of anxiety and fear of missing out.
Interesting. And when was it exactly? So you said the 2nd or 3rd of March here in Australia. Was there an event that was associated with that? You talked about the cruise ship. Was there something from people seeing something and then they're like toilet paper that you kind of were able to like associate it to?
Yeah, it was a real increase in the media. It went from the Corona story went from being outside of our periphery, like away from us, and it was the first time it became internally to Australia. And so I think for a lot of people, they were seeing the situation in China occur and on social media and on mainstream media. And then that was kind of outside of our space, like it didn't feel as real. But when it became realistic, as you said, with the cruise ships and Australian members on cruise ships, and then when the story began to release that Australia, it was pretty much imminent. The corona was going to reach to Australian shorelines and become spread around the country. That's when the momentum really kicked up. And basically coming back to that fear of missing out behavior mentality of humans, it wasn't logical. It was more a thing of I should go out and buy pasta, cans of beans, toilet paper, and alcohol, and then go home. And then like I'm prepared for the apocalypse. But the problem is a lot of people don't understand the buying cycle, the production and manufacturing cycles of products. So they don't know that there's going to be another batch in a week or another 2 weeks. They're just basically thinking one day ahead and being like, I have to prepare for now because I might not be able to come back in a week's time. But as we've seen, like that's not the case. Like we've still been able to go to supermarkets. Yes, you shouldn't hang around in parks and bars and do other things, but you can still send someone out to a supermarket to get groceries. So it's just kind of a lack of understanding of the situation and where it was going to end up. But in the panic and like the fear of missing out, people just wanted to get as much as they could. So the original like prognosis from that point was the story of it being outside of our circle of Australia and actually coming into Australia.
Interesting. And did you see any differences or were there discrepancies among Australia, US, and UK?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, people in the UK definitely seem to be the chillest of all people in the world. They were like, no, we got this, we're fine. Like they took them a really long time to jump into panic buying mode. So I didn't really follow. I didn't see the UK media as much before that occurred. We kind of, it was quite busy. I wasn't able to keep track of that, but it definitely felt like the media stories in UK weren't as intense. And so that really meant that the panic buying behavior wasn't fueled as hard as it was in Australia and the US. But you really can track basically like the first stories of whenever Corona began to reach the countries like Australia, UK, and USA. That's when the panic buying really occurred. It's basically like when we think that it doesn't affect us or it's not in our backyard, people were very, very relaxed. It wasn't until it came into our periphery that it really took off.
Gotcha. Are you seeing it? How is the situation now? Like, what are you seeing in terms of, is the hysteria still there? Is it, what are you seeing in terms of your numbers and your sales right now versus, well, I would say 3 phases, right? Before Corona, during Corona, you talked about 10xing sales, and then now.
It's one of those things where we really, I mean, the result of the panic buying has obviously been a positive for our numbers as a business, but we're definitely not celebrating it. Like for us, it's a learning curve, but we've really taken the stance of doing the best that we can to make sure people stay calm and don't panic buy, because it's the people who are less advantaged in our community who end up missing out on fundamental groceries and needs. So we really have taken a stance the whole time to make sure that people don't kind of fall into this buying pattern behavior. But in terms of the way that we've approached that, we've seen it occur in the company pre, middle, and well, I guess we haven't gone post-Corona, but in the middle, we've really seen an uprise in new customers that we wouldn't have reached otherwise. So we've got basically a waiting list on our website. We've kept subscriber customers, like the stock for subscriber customers available, so they're serviced. But the amount of the uptick in new customers that are coming to the site daily is fascinating. So our general site traffic has increased like by a significant amount of percentage, and that has stayed. Like I was expecting to see a huge spike in sale, like the Corona spike in sales, and then once we sold out and told people to sold out, they would drop off again. But we've basically seen a continuation of an increase in traffic. So even though the hysteria around panic buying has probably mellowed in the stores because companies are actually putting measures in place. So, you've got the supermarket saying you can only buy, certain numbers of products and that's it. That's really helped. But online, you can still see the traffic is very much searching for toilet paper. Like even though we're sold out, we're still getting a tremendous amount of traffic to the website. I think there's a real hunger for it, for lack of a better word, for toilet paper. And what we're trying to do as best as we can is minimize that panic FOMO feeling, especially once the world replenishes toilet paper stock. So I think we'll see in the next month or so toilet paper becoming much more readily available in the market. It will just depend on how businesses go about selling it. So for us, we're not going to just open up shop and just say, hey, it's an open all frenzy, come get it. We're going to really do our best to make sure that the people who need it, so whether it's low-income earners, the elderly, etc., they get it first, and then it kind of eventually we filter out to everyone else. If you let the floodgates open, I think we'll probably see a second round of what the panic buying saw in the first one.
What do you mean we'll see a second round?
I think like if the supermarkets didn't, if it was a free-for-all, so if the supermarkets didn't prevent people from buying more than one roll of toilet paper, what you would see is each time the supermarkets get stocked, you would have another round of people coming in and over purchasing and panic buying and not leaving stock for everyone else to come through and purchase. So even things like I went to the supermarket the other day, you can't buy more than 3 frozen goods at one time. So that's to really limit people from like panic buying and overstocking on frozen goods. And the same thing with toilet paper. If the supermarkets allowed people to come in and buy 5 packs of toilet paper, we would see the exact same situation occur, which is people would feel like they're missing out. They would overbuy, overstock, and then you'd have the same issue come. So we're doing a similar thing, which is we're not allowing people to come to we're slowly inviting people back into the store to purchase products, but it's only one box at a time. You can't buy multiple boxes for your house if it's not necessary. So we're really trying to take a similar approach, which is as companies restock toilet paper and other products, but in this circumstance, toilet paper, you want to make sure that you can create an inventory which allows for a growing base, but also you're not fueling that panic buying behavior. So you want to make sure people are only getting one box at a time to make sure that you're not adding to that panic buying purchase behavior.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Coming out of this, and well, not out of it, but being in this environment now, how, and you've touched on this to a certain degree, but how has your strategy as a company changed when it comes to your marketing and the way you're approaching the market? I mean, I understand that now you're putting restrictions in terms of how many people can buy, but what are the channels? Are you promoting yourself on, you're doing more SEO, or are you doing more paid, or have you stopped doing everything? What is going on in terms of your strategy? Maybe what was it before, and then what is it now with everything going around with Corona?
Our goal is to basically convert people from virgin toilet paper to recycled or bamboo. So what that means is virgin toilet paper is cutting down a tree, mushing it up, and then repurposing it into toilet paper. The problem is that cuts down trees and obviously has a really big impact on the environment. Whereas if you can turn textbooks and office paper into toilet paper, that's a much better use of our resources. So our main aim is to basically bring new people in to the business to turn them into recycled toilet paper users or bamboo toilet paper users. So a lot of our marketing strategy is about pulling people into the business and telling them a story which encourages them to make the switch if they haven't already made the switch. If they already do use recycled, it's still about telling that brand story, but it's a bit easier to get them on board. So a lot of our marketing strategy was about advertising, paid advertising. So that's Facebook ads, Google ads, billboards, radio, all the usual suspects in that regard. As Corona occurred and the panic buying happened, we sold out globally. So we sold out in Australia, UK, and USA for new customers. I should clear that up. For new customers, we still have our subscriber base catered for, but basically we sold out. So we had to mark the store sold out and stopped all marketing efforts in that paid advertising space. So we turned off Facebook ads, turned off Google ads, all those things. We then shifted our approach to more of a communication, really leaning heavily on the communication piece to our current customers, but also new customers. So that was really around how can we as a toilet paper company change the conversation from being panic buying and stockpiling to one of let's try and calm the community a little bit and say it's okay, you'll get your toilet paper, it's gonna come, but just relax in the time being and help tell that in a friendly, fun, nice way, as opposed to kind of just, it's not like kind of slapping someone's hand saying don't do this, you're wrong, do it in a really friendly, nice way. So we've shifted from paid advertising and put much more of our resources into things like organic social media. So Facebook posts, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, like on the organic side, lots of really fun, playful content to make people feel good in a time which is quite stressful for people. And then leaned really heavily into our email. So all those new customers who have signed up to a wait list, we're continually communicating to them to be like, hey, this is where we're at. This is what you can expect. This is when we're going to come back online, as well as giving them some soft, fun, playful things in the meantime to make them feel good and calm and relaxed and hopefully give them a positive feel in what is in a kind of stressful climate that we're in. And then also leaning more into the PR side of things is probably the third element to that. So joining into the toilet paper conversation, both on television, on radio, etc. So our CEO, Simon, has been doing a lot of radio and TV interviews to basically communicate the same message, which is like, this is a really strange time that we live in. And whilst as a toilet paper company, we've done, it's helped increase sales, we really want to make sure that we can alter the behavior of the community to go to a much calmer wave of buying. So to answer your question, it's kind of a long way around. We've basically gone from quite a hard traditional advertising route to now more of a soft communication, make sure people are feeling heard, that we're communicating to them as much as possible, and they feel, hopefully we can change the conversation from panic and fear to one of something which is a little bit more calm, give them a little bit of spark of enjoyment in the day, and hopefully make them laugh in the time being. So it's been a real shift as a business, but it's been a good learning, and it's actually the feedback we're getting from our customers and potential customers on our wait list has been really positive.
That's very interesting. A lot of people I would imagine would think that, a company that is having such a surge in demand would increase spend on marketing and acquisition, and people who are not getting a surge will reduce and cut their costs. But it's very interesting to see, even from your standpoint, you've reduced some of the marketing costs and obviously increased in some of the other areas. But that's really fascinating. We are seeing the next waves of panic buying, similar psychology, kind of acknowledging the fact that there's another phase coming in, and the question is whether we would follow the same logic.
Yeah, I think humans are weird and wonderful creatures. We're great on some levels, but they're also very illogical and silly on another level. And it's both positive and negative. But I think that we're in unprecedented times, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and that creates anxiety and fear for a lot of people. And if you're on social media a lot, or if you're looking at a lot of mainstream media, your emotions are also very much triggered by outside sources as well, which can often really create I don't want to say frenzy, but can elevate your emotional state quite quickly. And so I think that we'll still see, like, humans are humans. They're going to probably continue to act in a certain way. And if we could potentially see extra panic buying, but I would say that the positive is that we're seeing supermarkets limit people to a certain level, certain numbers of products to buy at a certain time. I think we've learned from the first round. So I think that the chance of panic buying will be mitigated or slowed down by the businesses or the retailers who are selling product. And so I think there's always going to be some businesses who are going to try and take advantage of it. But I think for the most part, we're doing a really good job as a community to make sure that we're limiting that process and making sure that everyone gets a good share of the products which are available. So I think we might see a little bit of it. I mean, humans are humans, but I think across the business sector, it's going to be mitigated a lot better than what we did the first round.
Yeah, I think, even if it happens on a level that we didn't anticipate, I think it probably is going to follow the same pattern. There's a book that I picked up. I had it over here and I picked it up. I think we maybe briefly talked about this before. The title of the book is The Madness of the Crowds. And it was written in 1840s or 50s or something like that, where the author analyzed all the panic buying and the hysteria that happened in the past. In France, the Mississippi bonds, and in England, and in Holland with the tulips and everything. And how the masses drove this mania. And the argument is sometimes you see a massive spike in a short period of time, but there are also sometimes that you see this spike over a long period of time, whether it was GFC, where there were loans being given out because, hey, it's working there, we got to do it as well, versus here. And I think this whole toilet paper and this process of buying so quickly is going to be an interesting case study that we're going to see popping up in the next year or two, with people talking about the crowd going crazy.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see there is so much potential for a bunch of PhDs and master theses and white papers on this. I'm really intrigued to see what comes out, like I said, in the next couple of years when people double down on it to put some real in-depth psychology into it. Because, yeah, as you said, humans are humans and we tend to repeat ourselves. But it'll be interesting to see, the more detailed information that comes out of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've got another question from Alex. How will you determine and validate these vulnerable people to get priority for your product?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's one that, simply put, we can't do this as well as we would love to be able to do it. We would love to be able to say, hey, let's find all the people who are in need and get to those people as quick as possible. We're doing things like we can track people who have made certain orders in certain time periods. So, for example, if you've made an order in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we will say, no, you need to go. We basically have a wait in line process. So we can track people who have made certain orders at which times, and people who haven't had an order for quite a while, we'll make sure that they're bumped up the line first because they're obviously in need. In terms of really specifying exactly who the target is, so whether it's an elderly or someone with a low income earner, we're still trying to figure that out. We're doing some level of one-to-one communication with our customers and doing nominations, and also finding out how we can get in contact with groups that actually entertain those needs. But we're doing things like we've given donations to a bunch of organizations to basically attain to those certain people. So, for example, we have there's kind of like a Meals on Wheels service in Australia called Home Care Delivery, for example. They're helping deliver toilet paper to people in need. There's things like organisations in Victoria and Australia wide who help deliver to those people. So we've done our best to give them product to get that to people. But in terms of the actual sales within our business, we're still trying to figure out the best way to do that. So we've got that line process of making sure that people who have ordered recently are kind of pushed a little bit, aren't kind of bumped up the rank too soon. But yeah, we're still in the process of trying to figure out the best way to do that. So yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all in that process.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what is going on.
Yeah.
And had to adapt to it. Did you change your marketing focus since the COVID-19 spike? Example, shifting budget from one channel to other, or pausing any paid channels because organic traffic was coming through anyway? I think we've kind of answered that question where you said your focus is now more on organic channels, Facebook organic posts, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and also focusing on PR. And lastly, that communication, upping that communication element of the organization. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So we've kind of also shifted. I suppose you call it PR, but it's not the intention. But we've really shifted towards trying to find channels as a means of finding people. So coming back to your previous question before, which is how do we get toilet paper to those in need? We've been using things like radio collaborations. So we'll work with certain commercial radio stations in Melbourne and around Australia to find people in need. So we did a collaboration with Triple M and Fox the other day on Hughes' channel, where basically they're reaching out to their listeners and saying, hey, nominate someone who needs toilet paper and how can you, and who needs it now. And so basically what happened was we eventually found a group where there was a woman who was donating. She was doing grocery shopping for elderly in a country town in Victoria. And so basically we were able to donate toilet paper along with some other companies donating their own goods to get it to her so she could then distribute it to the elderly people in her community. So that's kind of more, we're trying to use media as a way to find people and communicate, not necessarily push our brand. So we've got a large waiting list, so we don't necessarily need to kind of extend that further. I mean, it's always an added bonus, but it's been more of an interesting shift as opposed to where we would have gone to a radio station to advertise, to push a product, to communicate a product, to get them into the business. We're actually using it as a second, basically, to reach people, to find them to those people in need. But to come back into the kind of the actual original question around marketing, yeah, I kind of summed it up early, which is basically we've gone from paid media to more of the communication side of marketing, like PR and social media.
Interesting. The other question that I wanted to ask you is do you think there will be a mini correction in the toilet paper industry, right? So on a larger scale, when something happens and something goes wrong, and there's a surge in something, let's say it's stocks, let's say people start buying stocks, the stock market goes through the roof. There is a correction, right? Correction being defined by different people differently, but one definition is there's a drop of anywhere from 0 to 20% in the demand for it, and if it's more than that, it's called a downturn or a recession or whatever you want to call it. But do you think, and I think this is kind of related to Susie's question as well, do you think in the long term it's going to be a correction in the toilet paper industry if there are a lot of people who've gone out and purchased a year-long worth of toilet papers? Is that something that you're worried about, or not really? That's not a concern.
No, I don't think it's a huge worry. So the reason why I'm taking a little bit of time to answer that is there's kind of a few different angles I'm thinking of. So one is, I think we're going to see, I know, we're going to see a lot of people jump into the space to take advantage of the toilet paper game. So we've seen quite a large number of newcomers into the market globally to take advantage of the new demand for toilet paper. So I think what we'll see is you'll see a real increase in the market share, like we'll see an increase in new businesses entering different industries, and then we'll also see them fall away as that demand goes away on the other end. So that will be a really interesting thing to see. But in terms of the crux of the question around the downturn of demand, I think we will, for example, see that people will get, instead of buying 10 or 15 rolls, they would have bought 200 rolls, and the repurchase rate on that will definitely decrease. As a subscription, as a part of our business is a subscription element, and so anyone who's in e-commerce subscription will know churn, and so churn is a really big can make or break your business. And so for us, it'll be really interesting to see what the cohorts who have been purchasing in the last month, for example, how they churn in the next 3 to 6 months. I think we'll still see now, like we've had this huge panic buying for, let's say, the last month globally in supermarkets and online stores. So I think that will you'll see like a lower repurchase rate from there. But I still think that with the way that the supermarkets are reducing how much you can buy, and then also how online stores are reducing how much you can buy, I think we'll see like a bit of a potential slowing down of repurchase rate. But because we're deciding how many rolls you can buy, I think they'll limit the potential drop off as a result of downtime, because you'll still have people who need toilet paper in a month or the second month or the third month, as opposed to being this like 6 month quiet patch. But I think it will be interesting. Like, I mean, I remember I was only thinking about it a few weeks ago. I remember my grandma, she was in the Great Depression when it occurred. And I remember her telling me stories where people were using newspapers as toilet paper. And I'm curious as to whether that stuff, that lasts in your mind. It's like whether we turn into a society for the next 10 years of people who are just prepared for an outbreak. And maybe that becomes because in a recent memory, that's like what happens with people. Who knows? I mean, I don't know where that's going to run, but there is an element. There's definitely in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about what that repurchase rate will look like and how it will affect the business from a cash flow perspective. But right now it's more about kind of getting toilet paper to people who need it, and then we'll worry about that as the time comes in.
And that's an interesting topic that you bring up. As you're going through this, what are the other metrics and KPIs that you keep in a close track of? So, you talked about churn, talked about repurchase. What are some of the numbers that you're keeping a very close eye on as you go through this process?
Yeah, so there's a few metrics. The big one that really comes to my mind first is the amount of tickets answered per tickets coming in. So customer service is a really big part of our business. We want to make sure that we're listening to people and communicating with them as much as they need. And if anything, over communicate more than under communicate. Like that's basically the rule. So that a really big metric for us is how many tickets we're answering, and not necessarily in a certain timeline, because that can be gamed. People can just answer tickets as fast as possible, and they're terrible tickets, for example. You'll see some businesses have that number. But basically, what's the feedback on our tickets from customers, and are we getting to them as quick as possible is a really big one, especially in a time when people are feeling anxious. Another big one is looking at the churn. As we mentioned, that's a really big one to understand where that's going to happen. We can't really see that for another month or two because we sell 48 rolls per box. It does take time for people to get to the end of that cycle to then make a second purchase. The cohorts purchasing, another really big one is looking at where our traffic is coming from. And then as we begin to, the really big metric for us right now is as we begin to slowly invite people to make a purchase from our wait list, is understanding how many of those people actually make a purchase. So for every X number of emails we send out to invite them into the store, how many actually make a purchase? So I'm really intrigued to see over the next few weeks that of the amount of people on our wait list, how much are actually truly want to be part of the Who Gives a Crap brand, and how much of them were just signing up to every potential toilet paper provider there was and putting an email down or just trying to find any avenue they could. So for me, like to come back to your kind of original question, is the customer service tickets, how are we doing? That's like a really big important thing for us. And the second one is looking at what that purchase rate from from the new customer wait list will be. I'm really intrigued to see how that goes. A lot of the metrics that I would focus on normally, things like return on advertising spend or CAC, like customer acquisition costs, and those sort of paid media or paid advertising metrics have kind of gone out the window as we've turned those down. So the bonus for me is I don't have to do as much reporting. So that's a good thing. Less reports on Monday mornings.
All right, I love it. Who comes up with this idea or these ideas? Is it you? And if so, can you talk a bit about the process behind it?
It's a team collaboration. It's definitely, I cannot take credit for that. I just rock up to work and do a few emails, then go home, pretend I've done something. Basically, we have a creative team internally to who gives a crap. So we made a decision quite a long time ago that we really wanted to build out the internal skills of our business. And so we have a creative team internally. So we have copywriter, designer, and there's a couple of each, but basically copywriter, designer, a videographer, and kind of like brand strategy. And so what we'll do is we basically I should also preface this, is that we actually work remotely. So we're a remote business. So a lot of the creative team we have creative team basically spread around the world. And so we do a lot of this all via Zoom. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, we've got a channel or a campaign or an idea that we want to run with. What's this going to be about? And so basically we'll create a brief with the marketing team, and then basically have a brainstorm with the creative team and the marketing team and make sure everyone's on the board, and we kind of throw some ideas around. Everyone will go away, and then a pitch will be provided, which will basically be like the top 4 ideas that we think are going to be good. And then we basically do a kind of a poll internally in the company, decide which direction makes sense, and then we run with that, and then the creative team produce it. So we're very much very creative heavy in the sense that we really believe that good copy, good imagery, and good storytelling are really important to a brand. We lean heavily into that. And so to answer your question, it's kind of a mix of combining hard data, hard science, with lots of really great creative, mix them together in a pot, and then makes a tasty marketing cake, basically, a creative cake. So that's the way we think about it. It's a lot of hands on deck to do it, but it tends to give the best results.
The creative cake. Sounds like a good title for a book. All right. No, thanks so much. That's so important. It's very hard to come up with creative campaigns. I think a lot of companies, especially in our space, the B2B space, everybody sounds the same. Everybody looks the same. Everybody sounds the same. If you take a company's name from their website and put another company in, can't tell the difference. That's a big challenge for a lot of brands.
The ones that do it well are the ones who have made a decision early on about who they are as a brand and who they want to be and how they want to portray themselves to the world. You can get quite complicated and deep and get quite granular about how you do it. But the way I think about it is if you were a person, how would you want to be in the world? And basically you just design your brand around the favorite person you want to be. So for us, we decided we want to make buying toilet paper a fun, pleasurable, and delightful experience, whether you actually buy toilet paper or don't buy toilet paper from us, but any interaction you have with us, whether it's recruiting, whether it's a invoice you get from us, whether it's a social media post, or whether it's an email that you get from an add to cart that you didn't make a purchase, we want you to feel delighted and happy and fun about an experience rather than feeling like it's a typical company trying to take your money. And because we're dealing with a topic which can be a little bit unnerving for some people, both on the toilet front, but then also on the issue that people are actually dying because of the results of sanitation, we deliberately made a choice that we didn't want to go down a make you feel guilty charity typical route that you see from a lot of charity angles. And we wanted you to actually feel really good and happy and joyful about what you're doing. Because if you make someone feel good, like when you tell someone that compliments someone down the street or at a bar, or like you tell someone they're great, they want to spend more time around you and they want to be around you more. And so the best way to do that with a customer is to be that person. So the more you can make someone feel good about who they are, the more they're going to want to hang around with you. And then you feel good as well. So smiles all around.
Absolutely. No, I love it. Look, this has been great, and I've very much enjoyed our conversation. And thank you so much for your time. Now, look, if people want to get in touch with you or they want to know more, what is the best way? Is there a way for them to get through the waiting list, get on the top of the waiting list? What is the best way for them to get in touch with you and hear more about what you do?
I'll be taking bribes. So if anyone has a spare 200K, I'll just slide that on the table. No. Yeah, so I can actually see like Kim, I can see a question from you. So if you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, Twitter, I use a lot of. I don't spend a whole lot of time on social. I try to keep, as in the Instagram, Facebook side, I try to keep that to a minimum. But if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, happy to answer any questions and or LinkedIn. So I think the guys have my details. If not, just stalk me through LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find.
Sounds good. What's your Twitter handle for if people wanted to hit you up?
My Twitter handle is Tim. It's Tim H Baxter.
Gotcha. All right, Tim. Thank you so much for again joining today. Really enjoyed this conversation and looking forward to more.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. And everybody else, thanks a lot for jumping on. And until next time, we'll see you around. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, we'd love it if you rate and review it on Apple Podcasts or your platform of choice. And for more B2B growth content, check out our website, growthcolony.org. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Have a great day.